Twitter will know that I've taken the mickey out of him a little bit, because one day he went out to go and get, I think, a takeaway or a cup of coffee or something like that, and on his way back got caught in a revolving door, and his partner, being obviously a bit of a cad, decided to take a photograph of him rather than let him out immediately. So there he was, completely in what I can only describe as what looked like bunny slippers. But never mind.
You're not wrong. It's along those lines. But yeah, there's a little capsule type thing, and most people would let their husband out of the capsule, but she was very adamant on filming me, like knocking, holding the pizza, going, "Let me out. What are you doing?" Anyway, it was very. It's still funny to rewatch it now. So,
well.
Yes.
Unlike the accountants that you deal with, we bookkeepers have quite a good sense of humour, so we thought it was great fun. So that's good. There is the old joke, isn't it? You know, why do firms of accountants always invite a bookkeeper to their Christmas party? Because they like somebody fun to speak to. But we'll not go there. You do have to keep friends with your accounting friends and everybody.
100%. You need, the relationship flows both ways. You can't have, small businesses need both. They need someone that's in the thick of it, of the business, and then they have needs for what accounting firms can do for them as well. So totally.
Yeah, I do tend to rib the accountants a little bit. I'm not sure they always think it's fun, but I've got a very sad sense of humour. What is it to say? Sarcasm is the lowest sense of humour, and I'm definitely down there with that. But never mind. So what we're talking about today is, well, I want to get a couple of things out of you, really, because you are a voice of accountancy, a global voice at that, and you've earned that over many years being at the forefront. So I want to know what's going to go on in the future. I'd like to know more about your product, because it's another one of those add-ons, and sometimes our members can be a bit skeptical that if they're not careful, they've got more add-ons and they can never find the original piece of software. So what's all that about?
Totally.
But also, what I'd like to start with is the whole purpose of Practice Ignition, as I see it, is making the bookkeeper look after the bookkeeper as well as they look after their clients. And that might sound strange, but I think I've said before, it's a bit like the cobbler's wife who's got holes in her shoes. We tend to be so busy looking after our clients, we don't look after ourselves. So I'm happy for you to tell us a bit about the product, and so will the members be. So what does it do exactly?
Cool, good question. There's plenty to unpack in there, right? And I guess firstly, the big thing I draw to is business continuity. So I think to your point on how does a bookkeeper look after themselves and look after their business, Practice Ignition fits into that space. I try not to be offended when people call us an add-on in that sense, because we're a product and a platform in our own right. But the biggest thing I would say, I know you're jesting and you're being hilarious. I also used to do the same thing. But Practice Ignition is there to help solve, not just bringing in new clients, but how do you manage your existing clients as well? So fundamentally, the product helps you create an engagement letter and a proposal and a payment collection all in one space. So if you think about it now, if you had to send a new client or an existing client a renewal of your fees in your engagement letter, all through your ICB template, that's not an easy thing to create. Sometimes it can take an hour, sometimes it takes longer. And then a lot of bookkeepers fall in the risk of actually not doing engagement letters as a result because of how hard it is to do. So our job is to make that part really, really simple and easy to the point where your clients actually enjoy doing it. And as a benefit of them signing your proposal, you're setting up a direct debit mandate for the work automatically in the background. Now, arguably, bookkeepers are more likely to be able to run monthly recurring fixed fees because you're actively doing bookkeeping work, payroll work every single month for your clients. So for a bookkeeper to set up monthly recurring revenue in their business is actually I personally think, one of the easiest transitions you can make. Now, the challenge there is how do you move out of hourly pricing and all those things. Fortunately, we're working with ICB in July to run a few different webinar series on how do we move to fixed fees, how do we handle pricing and negotiations and everything else in between. But our product fundamentally feature set, we're going to help you create an engagement letter, have a really professional, slick-looking proposal, and as part of that proposal, you're going to be able to collect both credit card or direct debit payment information from your client, all in one screen. So that typically gets bundled into client onboarding. So we're a client onboarding tool. We help you win new customers, but we also help you manage all of your existing revenue. So when that scope of work changes, there's more bookkeeping transactions, you're adding more payroll staff, you would adjust the agreement agreement in PI, which automatically updates the payment schedule and the invoice schedule as well. So when we think about business continuity and looking after the bookkeeper, Practice Ignition is where all of your revenue, your pricing, your payment plans lives. And it's synced into both QuickBooks and or Xero, depending if you're using one of those two products for your own accounting, like your invoicing and so forth, automatically. And that's where the real power of it lies, that you've got this really interconnected business continuity platform, a lot of time saved, and you look super impressive. Your clients love it. They want to work with someone that's easy to work with. So when you create these experiences for them, it makes it that much of a joy to work with you as a result.
You missed out Sage. Now, obviously, we've got 3 big players over here, 4 if you take in Iris as well, but you don't work with Sage?
Today, we don't have a live integration with Sage. It's definitely something we do get requests for. We've just had a sense where we haven't been in a position to integrate with their cloud version of their product. Obviously, we don't have any intentions to integrate with the desktop version of the product. We've always been very, the product's always been positioned as forward, thinking towards cloud-based practices, and typically we find those firms are using either QBO or Xero, but at the same point, we have plenty of customers using Sage and using Practice Ignition, and we have a few workarounds that we help them with to make sure they're getting maximum value out of both products.
So you took me up there for calling you an add-on. Yeah, okay. I didn't realise I was actually insulting you. I normally pick my insults well, but I missed that one.
No, it's a good one. You've been doing it for weeks and you've never noticed.
So what is the difference?
Well, so when you talk about an add-on, you're talking about an add-on that's the add-on itself is almost like a throwaway, like, it's an extra thing that maybe we don't need, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of add-ons, if you think about all the ecosystem or the add-ons that exist today, they've had close to $500 million worth of revenue invested in those platforms. So to call them an add-on per se almost sounds a little like a throwaway. It's like, And then at the same point, you think about for you to go and build a receipt bank, for example, would cost you a hell of a lot of money, right? Like as in hundreds of millions and so forth. So a lot of these times they are products that can be used standalone, but they obviously get referred to as an add-on because back in the day, back when Xero and QuickBooks launched their marketplaces, it was, you're a Xero add-on. But really, these days, they don't refer to them as add-ons. You're an ecosystem partner that integrates. You're a fully fledged standing product. The idea being that it either enhances or takes functionality further that you couldn't actually do in the platform, or you just introduce new functionality you can't do in those platforms anyway.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that you and I have been promising ourselves for, since you came along to the lunch that we had at the House of Lords when we were talking about.
Thank you for that. Enjoyed my first trip there.
And I can't believe how many months ago that was, but ever since then we've been saying we do need to get together. And I want to talk to you about how we integrate what you offer into what our members offer, because we have a lot of what you're doing as the template, but it needs to link into the whole infrastructure of what we do on a daily basis. So we will be talking about that. So it'll be interesting to see how that works and whether or not we can link the other stuff that they have to do for us through you back into us, and we can have that all linked together so that you don't have to go out of one screen into another screen and back again, etc., etc. Because we're trying to make life easy for the bookkeepers, because actually, much as I think everybody thought when COVID came in, they'd be sitting twiddling their thumbs and losing clients hand over fist. Thankfully, it hasn't worked that way. They are rushed off their feet. They've got clients coming out of their ears. And as far as I can see, it's only going to get busier when, the new furlough payments start, but particularly as clients come out of lockdown. And I think, to be honest, we're probably going to lose some clients, but judging by the way that we're growing our numbers at the moment, hopefully it will be matched or surpassed by the number of new clients. So there's always life out there. And in fact, since we started our bookkeeping organisers, 24 years ago now, we found that whatever problems there are, we can gain from it as bookkeepers in many ways. And I don't mean that triumphantly or anything else, but when the big banking crisis came, we had such a lot of people who suddenly found themselves without a job, who are now in membership as damn good bookkeepers, you know. So out of every cloud, we think that we can find a silver lining, which I think is good.
Yeah, I can't remember the specific statistics, but I remember early on when all the lockdowns were coming in, a lot of businesses were shutting down. There was a large amount of new companies still getting created every single day. I think someone had posted a company's house statistic or whatever it was, saying that there had been over 1,000 new companies established on like week 1 or week 2 of lockdowns, everything coming in. Now, you know, that could be closing down one to set up another and avoid all the payments on an old business. But I'm more in the belief that there are more opportunities that come out of that. People get into furlough and they're like, cool, what are the other problems that live around me? And some of the best innovations we've, you know, seen in our time come from having too much, sitting around out of these, as you said, out of the clouds, where people can solve the new kind of problem that exists today, something that didn't exist 4 months ago, right?
Yeah. I mentioned to you before, and it's actually a topic that we're working on at the moment, that the cloud has helped bookkeepers, certainly because they can still deal with their clients and accountants likewise, and we can get through this. But on a general principle, we've had the cloud with us now for several years. Bookkeepers were very early adopters. Almost all of our practices are virtually all cloud-based now. Everything is whatever you want to call it. What we are finding is that some clients are kicking back a bit now and saying, well, hold on a minute. I took you on because I have a Tesco bag and other supermarkets are available. I have a bag full of receipts. I really do want to drop that on your doorstep. Now, the fact that you say now I can photograph it and I can upload it or something like that, that's all very well, but I don't actually want to do that. So will you still do it? And you probably remember it, at the conference last year, I was saying, look, you can't tell clients if that's what they want. You can't say, no, go away, because where are they going to go? And as time moves on, I think more and more of them will become more IT literate. But at the moment, it's a time thing. They don't see it as part a useful use of their time. Are you finding this anywhere other than in the bookkeeping area?
I mean, nobody wants to spend money if they don't want to spend it, right? So the big question there is a value piece. It's like, I don't think it's worth me doing that because I'm not getting something in return for that, right? So I think there's always an education element. Whenever you introduce a new piece of software, a new way of doing things, there needs to be an understanding of what are we doing, why are we doing it, and how is it impacting me, and how am I benefiting as a result of that as well? So in that example, if someone's coming in with a bag of receipts saying, I'd rather just give this to you, it's like, yeah, that's fine. And this is how much it's going to cost for you to keep doing it that way. If you'd like to reduce your spend with us and make our life easier, this is the other approach you can take. And I think it's not about getting annoyed with clients and they say, I don't really want to do it that way. You've got two options. Choose to educate them and show them the value of them doing it themselves and scanning it digitally by taking photos or whatever it may be, or allow them to keep doing it the way you're doing, and you build your processes around that, going, okay, what do we do when a bag of receipts come in? How do we digitally scan it and get it into our systems to make sure everything's okay? Because at the end of the day, your job isn't to necessarily understand if they're using digital or physical or whatever. Your job is to get the job done for them that you told them you would do, reconciling all the accounts, doing all the payroll and everything else. If you can then help them get it done in a way that makes them super happy and they're happy to keep paying your bill regardless of what it is, who cares how the job gets done? I care in that I want you to have better margins and I want you to be more efficient and do things faster, but you can't put a circle through a square-shaped hole, right? You've got to actually balance it all up. So educate your client or design a service around that, explain to your client what the value of both of those things are, and then make a decision. You can keep doing it this way. It's going to cost you 400 quid a month, or if you do it the other way, it's going to cost you 250 quid a month, and you tell me which one you want to do.
Yeah, I think that's an absolutely fair point. My wife and I went out at the weekend for the first time. We hired a car. We went for a ride round. I was supposed to fill the car up with petrol. Got to the petrol station. There were about 20 people deep. So I thought, oh, forget this. Took it back, and they rang me up the following morning and said, "You didn't fill up the car." I said, "No, it's fine." They said, "Yes, but we've got to charge you for it." I said, "I don't care. Just do it, because it's. I wanted to go home. I was ready for the tea, and that was it, So. And I
it's a price you're willing to pay. I mean, I've done the same thing going into airports. Obviously, in another lifetime, used to travel quite a lot, hire a lot of cars, you do a lot of meetings like, cool, I'm running late. I've got a chance to your point, the petrol station's full. It's $1.14 or a pound 20 at the station. It's a pound 50 if the rental car people fill it up. And I'm like, that's fine. That's a price I'm willing to pay, but I understand the consequence of that, right? I'm educated enough to understand that in the first place.
I think it's one of the things that we've pointed out a lot to our members over the years constantly is that keep the client involved with your decision making. Don't thrust new decisions on a client. Talk it through and then keep them involved. And, it's been a standard thing for ever since we first started in business. The only real complaints we ever get about our members revolves around an invoice. And normally it's because they've done a bit more work, they've slapped in an invoice, kept their head down and hoped the client wouldn't notice. But actually, that's the wrong way of doing it. You have to say, well, this is why it's bigger this month. Do you realize how much I'm doing? And
transparency is key.
It's talk,
transparency
isn't it?
is key. You've got to I'm not charging you to do this session, right? But like if I sent you an invoice tomorrow and said, Gary, thanks for having me for 30 minutes. It's going to cost you £500. You'd be like, Trent, we invited you. And I'm like, yeah, but this is just how it is. Don't you know? And you're like, no, that's not how it goes. So, there's a good way there's a really quick and easy way to sour a relationship when we don't have really strong communication about our fee structure. And again, without trying to plug PI too much or practice ignition too much what we do, but honestly, this is the best thing that practice ignition helps you do. Communicate transparency around your fees, what you're charging, why you're charging it, and when it's due, right? So then even if you want to go and do another set of work, it's like updating your agreement every time. Client says, hey, can you do this for me? Yes, I can. I'm going to amend our agreement. You're going to see it, sign off on it. If you're happy to sign off on it, that'll amend the billing and we'll update accordingly. You can see exactly how much it's going to cost you.
Yeah. I mean, one of the big things we've had with our members always is a lack of confidence. They have this idea that they are bookkeepers, so they're not accountants. Well, we know that, but that's a positive as far as I'm concerned. And they sometimes undervalue the service that they're giving to their clients. Well, if they undervalue the service, the client isn't going to keep telling you that actually, no, don't worry about it. You are really worth this to me. It's got to be a joint thing. It's got to be the other way around. So we do encourage people to just think about what they're doing. And one of the, if I can call this a good thing to come out of COVID, has been that our members have realized just how important they are because their clients have been begging them for help. And so I think they said, I've done a really good job for this company. I've helped them stay afloat, etc. Well, that's what they're doing on a daily basis, and it shouldn't really need COVID to explain that to them. But yeah, it's interesting stuff. So COVID, that's the latest problem that's hit us. They come every 3 or 4 years or something or other. Where do you see the next big challenge coming? Is it coming out and re-establishing businesses and getting trading again, or what?
I mean, look, there is a bit of that, but like even just looking at the bookkeeping accounting community, there's still the biggest transition and challenge is people moving and changing their softwares. And again, this is going to sound really old and boring, and I apologize, but the fact that we're still moving to the cloud is fine. But most of the time, we've only moved one portion of it. We've done our ledger to the cloud, but we're still doing other things manually in other places. So that's still going to take a long time to transition, where we need to fully adopt and fully adapt. And not just talking about the bookkeeping business, I'm talking about your clients as well. If all you've done is stuck them on a cloud product in a receipt bank or an auto entry or a Lightyear or whatever, you've only done half your job because they've still got a point of sale system that's going manually. They've still got manual reporting going on in Excel. Like there's so many other areas we can speed up and be more efficient and create more transparency for our clients. Your job is to help them translate what's going on in their business because they look at the numbers and they get no idea. Like absolutely none. They can't understand a P&L report. They couldn't tell you where they're spending or not spending enough money. You're in the thick of it. You know where all the numbers are hidden, where all the buried bodies are and all that kind of stuff. And that's the real opportunity, is helping them understand and get better integration of data flows into the business. I always looked at bookkeepers being the digital mechanic to help pipe everything coming in so that the reporting going out for the accountant looks really, really good. And that's where that relationship is really powerful. If all of the data that you're submitting and working with on the accounting firm on is crystal clear, even that your small business client gets it as well, like that's That's key. Where you can't do it, as your example before, is, you know, I've got a bag of receipts. Your job is then to figure out, well, how do we digitize and make that as efficient as possible as we can? And as I said, we're a long way from being anywhere close to that. There's going to be new technology that comes in still. There's always going to be new government regulations. There's always going to be something that changes the way we behave. Therefore, we need to know how to adapt. In the space of what we said before we started, like, what has it been, 8 to 10 weeks, the whole world has pivoted online, remote, so quickly because we absolutely had to. That will happen time and time again. So I think being adaptable and being able to be adaptable has been great. If you were already on the cloud, it was a lot easier for you to do. I've met so many people that were not. I've met accounting firms that had engagement letters they needed to print and get out to their clients, about 600 of them. And they're like, Trent, how can you help me automate 600 of these? I'm like, I can do so much, but when you get to printing, you know, that's where everything stops. Like, everything gets a lot harder at that point.
Yeah, I think cloud is a bit like beauty. It's in the eye of the beholder. You know, we think we're doing really well, and then somebody comes along with something and say, well, actually, you're not doing as much as you thought. I was talking to a firm recently, accountants again, but just by way of example, and they wrote to me to see if I wanted to move our business to them, and I had a handwritten Dear Gary, and I thought, oh, this is very nice. So I mentioned it to him. I said, oh, I quite like that. He said, yeah, we can't mail merge your name. So you shouldn't have told me that. I thought it was very personal. He said, no, we can't mail merge your name. He said, we're only allowed to mail merge the top 4 fields across the top of the letter. So anyway, he went down in my estimation then, having been what I thought was going to be a new big best friend, you know, but never mind. These things do happen. Yeah, it's horses for courses, as you say. And I think it is increasingly about communication, and not just picking up the phone and talking to somebody, but as you say, having a set of products which people are expecting, but when they arrive, they look smart, they look slick. It doesn't make you look like a multi-million pound turnover company. It just makes you look as if you've taken care, you've paid proper attention. And if you can do that for your own stuff, the client is going to think, well, if they can do that for their stuff, they're going to be good with mine as well. And I think that whole perception is something that comes across from everything you do, you know.
I think especially when you think about that, whether it's new clients or existing clients as well, like if they get to a point where they feel like you're making the effort for them,
yeah,
not just in the way that you turn up every single day, but like, again, imagine I turned up today not brushing my hair, not wearing my shirt, still wearing my slippers, to an interview that I wanted to then charge you £500 for, right? Again, taking my analogy before. What thought have I actually put into how I want to be presented and the way people I want to expect who I am and how I am? So I think when we think about, again, if you think about like what proposals and what PI does help with that, this is your digital version of how you show up, right? This is me showing up saying, yeah, we really care about what you do, therefore we invest and make sure that all of our systems do talk to each other and that we do run as efficiently as possible. No point preaching the cloud and automation and being all about how many good things we're going to do for you if you still spend just as much time manually being as unorganized in your own business. I think to your point earlier, you know, the cobbler with holes in his shoes or her shoes, we don't want to be that. It's like if you're going to promote and preach cloud and efficiency, you need to live it yourself. If you live it yourself, it'll come across a lot easier for your clients and you'll have a much easier process of convincing them that it's the best thing they should be doing.
I think it's quite difficult when you're seeing clients for the first time and you don't know quite which way to go, whether you should wear a shirt and tie. I mean, I tend to wear a shirt and tie because my members expect it of me and they pull my leg if I don't. But I've always...
Part of your brand, Gary. I've never seen you without... Exactly. You don't have a pocket square today. I'm a bit disappointed, actually.
No,
oh, you do?
Yeah, you can't see it. No, you've got the pocket square.
See? It's on brand.
Yeah. And you know, I've said before, there's a picture of me as a 4-year-old at Rhyl. Now, you probably don't know what Rhyl is, but it's a seaside town up on the North Wales coast. You go there when everywhere else is overcrowded and full, basically. It's nice, you know, nice enough. But I'm sitting there as a 5-year-old, I think it is, with my blazer and my tie on the side of the beach, you know. So my mum is responsible for this totally. So I have a lot to thank her for on that. But obviously, if you go around a Camtex or anything like that, it's all corporate T-shirt, you know, and everybody's got one. I mean, last year at the Luca Awards, Gary Turner wore his bow tie because his mum was coming along and all the rest of it. I've never seen him in that before. He's always been in a zero t-shirt. And it's sort of expected in your profession. But, you know, when bookkeepers are dealing with people, how do they make that decision? I know it's difficult to ask an Australian, but I mean, how do you make decisions on style?
Wow. It's, I don't know how to take that. It really depends on the brand that you're trying to put out there, right? Like if you are trying to shadow those techie kind of companies, and the people you're working with are expecting you to be that person, at the end of the day, they want to buy you and the service you can deliver. So I think when you get to that first meeting, as much as you want to make sure that you are well presented, I mean, personally, I would still rock up in a t-shirt in most cases. Sometimes I put a blazer on over the top of a t-shirt when I'm meeting with, say, a bigger accounting firm or whatever it may be. But most of the time, I still get away just rocking a t-shirt with some jeans and some boots or whatever it may be, because that's within my brand and the PI brand and what we've been about, if that makes sense. But if we were only working and partnering with, you know, top 100 accounting firms, then yeah, we'd probably end up wearing like button-up shirts and all that stuff, because that's the kind of people we're working with. So if you're in that space where you work with a lot of corporates, then sure, you could do that. But at the same point, I think when we saw these cloud accounting software companies come around in the first place, they started wearing t-shirts and they were breaking the mold of that corporate mentality that was there before, right? So sometimes the way you walk in can actually shake up the way people think and perceive who you are and what you need to be. If you walk in a suit, you're like, oh, you're another stiff suit, you're educated, blah, blah, blah. You walk in with a t-shirt and blow them away, and then again, you're preaching all these other things that resembles that techie brand, then I think that's on point. But I would either way say, just, you know, have a shower, stay clean, brush your hair, all that stuff. Like, do all that stuff, obviously, but whether it's more smart casual or bow ties is completely dependent on you, or, you know, your decision on how you want people to perceive you. And there's no right or wrong answer.
I did say I was going to ask you some strange questions. You didn't expect one on personal hygiene, did you? But never mind. No, thank you for that. No, it's interesting to know, because when we went across to America and launched over there, I started not to wear a tie, you know, which felt great. You know, I feel good not wearing a tie or anything else. And I
can imagine it.
Again, I've said on here before, we went to a big conference in New Orleans, and there were something like 20,000 people at this conference, and 5 of us on a thought leaders panel. And we'd all got ties in our pockets, and we sort of behind the screen in the green room said, what do you think, guys? And in the end, we all came out with ties, and it went down okay, and we were okay. But it is a difficult one. So we all agreed it was all or nothing. You know, if somebody had come along without a tie, we wouldn't have bothered.
Personally, if I'm on a panel and something like that, I actually prefer to wear a t-shirt and let everyone else wear a blazer and a tie or whatever. For the same reason, though, because it's like, I'm trying to blend, stand out, and have an opinion and have a voice. It's very hard to do that when you look the same as everyone else, is all I would say to that.
Yeah, no, I see where you're coming from. Matt has said, clothes maketh the man, Gary. Yeah, but what man does it make? That was such a question. But thank you for that.
Yeah. It's a good point. It's a good point.
I know, yeah, and I think it's different. Actually, I don't know how it was, probably about 5 or 6 years ago. I remember having Jennifer Warwer, who unfortunately has left the scene nowadays. She's working for a company called Dirt, I think it is, which is an eco-friendly company. I can't imagine working in dirt all day. But anyway, she sat in my office and said, look, the world is going to change. People want their accounts on a quarterly basis. They want one. They'll say, how am I doing today, folks? And you'll need to know. Now, we've sort of adapted to that. We're getting there. Where do you see the big change in direction coming? Do you think there's going to be one? Or is it going to be more of the same for a bit longer yet?
I think, kind of like I alluded to before, like, you're going to see some improvements in tech year on year on year. I think the biggest change initially was just being able to access the records online, and that was the biggest change. And then bank feeds, obviously, like, that was really like, oh my goodness, you know, no more statements. It's all just real time. Like, that was the stuff that got our juices flowing. I think you're less likely to come across that same euphoric experience and until you see it, but I don't expect to see it anytime soon. But what I am seeing probably more so in the UK is this all online cloud-based practice management, right? Like, and I think from, you know, whether it's Xero or a tax calc or whatever, like there's a lot of these tax lodgement products all going online and digital. So the end result needs to be our whole practice runs connected online, and we're not doing half of it here, half of it on the desktop and somewhere else. We want a single source of truth for everything, and we need everything to connect in. So I think until we're at that point, and that's where a lot of people get the real buzz, it's having deeper connections in the integration side of things.
I mean, I'm taking part in a discussion, I think, a couple of days' time with the government on blockchain and on, you know, the automated ledger, as they call it. Blockchain can go one of two ways. It can either give us all we've ever wanted, or completely lose us in it. I mean, are you getting involved at all in any of the planning towards this blockchain? Which, for those of you who don't know what it means, it just means everything links together so that everybody shares a common information. And I will cover that by saying, provided they're enabled to and allowed to, but nonetheless, it's stopping you repeating yourself time and time again, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we all want to move to like single entry everything, right? Like if I update something here, I want it to reflect in every other system that's connected to that. And I kind of, I guess, was alluding to that in my last point as well. Like it's going to be a long time before we buy one product that does all those things. So I think all the software companies have to do a better job of not only linking to the ledger, whether it's, again, Sage, QuickBooks, Xero, it's all the other apps that are in that stack as well. So like for Practice Ignition, it's not just enough for us to plug into the invoicing system. We want to plug into the workflow and the job system, if the tax system, if it calls for it as well, or wherever else you need that data to be all in sync. And then if I update one, I need everything else to be reflected and updated as well. We're not there yet. A lot of data or data pushing is one way. So PI pushes data into the accounting system, and the accounting system, being the single source of truth, pushes data into everything else. And that's where we get a sense of that at the moment. But a lot of people don't necessarily think about it in that sense. It's like, I've got this product that does this, but I always ask a lot of people, take a step back and look at all the data flows that exist. Are they all, draw a process map, get out a piece of paper and say, I've got this product here, this one there. How do they all connect and link in together? And is that making your life easier? Where are the gaps? And then you'll start to understand where you might want to reinforce or look at other ways to bring that data through.
Because I think our profession, as far as the software is concerned, has changed dramatically over the last decade. I mean, I remember sitting down with Gary Turner many moons ago. I've mentioned him twice now. He's not paying me for this, but and Xero was only just coming into this country. It's a very small organization, and we listened to what he had to say, and we thought, well, either this is the future, or this guy is another one of those, yes, I've got a magic product. And, you know, it has changed, and I think, excuse me, other software companies have had to change to keep up. So it's caused a race, and everybody works better if they're in a race, I think. And I think the same's happening with the banks. We've got very close links with Revolut, but also Tithe and Starling. And, you know, the way people, I mean, technology is pushing us and saying, right, this is now available to you. But I think the original idea came from some entrepreneur who said, I want you to do that. I can't do it. I'll invent something that will enable me to. So chicken and egg is still being debated, I think. But your system presumably links into all of the challenger banks so that we can keep an eye on absolutely everything as it happens.
Yeah, I mean, we don't necessarily need to integrate directly to the bank. So we process payments and put that payment into your bank account. And that's just like any credit card direct debit payment system. If you've used a Stripe or a Go Cardless or whatever, you kind of understand how our Practice Ignition payment system works behind the scenes. In terms of linking to banks, again, we don't really need to because your general ledger already does. There'd be no additional value that we can drive that you can't already get from those existing systems, if that makes sense. I think back to your point, though, you were just talking about like all the different innovations and stuff coming through. Like Xero, you know, one of the first. I think even Intuit had a cloud product back in 2002, like way back when. That looked completely different to what it does today, obviously. But even those firms and companies today still need to keep innovating because they now become the incumbent, right? And then you get tools and systems like Counting Up, good example, where it's banking and accounting and all these other bits and pieces that all plug in or whatever. But it takes time to grow a user base, right? And you've got to convince other systems that it's going to be worth doing. So I'm also a believer of the fact that innovation can only speed up when the companies that we don't have the legacy to worry about can actually motivate and get speed. That they can't do that when they're in that startup phase because they've only got a certain amount of cash and they've got to prove that it's a good idea. They've got to raise heaps of funds. They've got to scale a team up. And to be honest, we've just hired 70 people in the last 6 months. When I started in this business, there was 29 of us. Now there's about 133 of us because we keep hiring. Like we had a new person start this week. And, eventually we will become a large company with incumbent and legacy stuff that we have to figure out and deal with. But we also need to keep an eye on how do we keep innovating and driving value for our customer base. And again, Xero is in a similar spot. They need to do the same thing to still maintain their brand of, being innovative and so forth. But then Sage is also doing the same thing. They've been around a long time. They've been building products and providing value for a number of years. And where they are today and what they're building towards is almost reflective of the fact that they've still got to maintain everything that's going on. So this, whether you're an incumbent or, however long you've been around for, with all these new startups coming through, there's only so much traction they can get immediately without everyone, unless everyone's jumping on board, right? Because you still need more money, more staff to really scale up and deliver value to more people.
Yeah, I think being a market leader is not all it's cracked up to be because there's always somebody chipping away at the edges, and it's easier to lose that market share than perhaps be a young, lean, aggressive company that's doing the chipping away. And when I was a few years younger, I remember I worked with a man that had introduced fish fingers into the UK from the United States. Nobody had ever heard of fish fingers before. And he worked for Birdseye. Birdseye was the big company, and they came. Within 12 months to 2 years, Findus had decided they were going to do a fish finger. And then Ross or somebody did one as well. And he said the big problem was then that they started off with 100% of the market and they grew it very rapidly. But then rather than the market keep expanding, what happened was it was being cut up by everybody else, if you excuse the pun. So then they came up with, well, we've got to do something different. Oh, well, we're the only people who use whole cod pieces in our fish fingers, so they recreate the same product but with a different cell, a different tagline, and we have to keep doing this. So it's quite an interesting marketing challenge, I think.
Yeah, I think the big thing though is making sure that us as software companies are kept accountable to what are we actually really trying to do. What is the main purpose and why we're here? We're here to try and make people's lives easier, businesses' lives easier, which has a better impact and a flow on at another point. So I think as long as we're innovating for the right reasons and we're keeping our customers super central to every decision we make, then it's a good thing to do. But if we're just doing it for revenue, for market share, for whatever, a lot of bad decisions get made in that sense, and we're not necessarily doing the right thing by our customers as well. So, which isn't necessarily what corporate companies want to hear, right? But there's a real art to how do we make this profitable, but how do we make sure we're solving really key problems at the same time? And that is called design thinking and human-centered design. If anyone's interested, there's a whole practice on this that's been going for sort of 20 or 30 years now. But that's the magic right there. If I can make it a profitable product, but also solve some really key problems and challenges for my customer, you'll get some real magic in there. But if you're just doing things for revenue, but it doesn't actually benefit the customer, don't do it. If you do things completely for the customer, but it's not profitable, again, you've got to figure out what am I trying to do and how do I make a sustainable business?
I remember many years ago talking to Alexi Prem at Receipt Bank, and Alexi was chairman, I think, at the time, and they just raised 30 million, I think, or something like that. And I was having lunch with him, and I said, great, so this is it now then, you're rich, you made your money and all. He said, no. He said, we've got that money, but now we've got to spend it. He said, now we've got people breathing down our necks saying, well, we've given you this money, what do you do with it? And he wasn't the relaxed, happy person I thought he might be, and they've done really
it gets harder. We're going through the same thing, I think, because we raised 26 million in August last year. And it's not like that, investors don't want to see you sit on that cash and just generate interest on it, right? They want to see you grow that at a phenomenal rate. They're like, we need you to spend, take bigger risks, go bolder, invest it in your product, do all the things that you think you need to do. How do you go from where you are now to 10x that in a 3-year period, right? Again, hence hiring 70 people and 40 odd engineers and whatever. You're going to have a really crack hot product at the end of it. But as I said, you need those fundamental core pieces of what are we solving, who are we solving it for, and is that going to help us create a sustainable business? for the next 10 years, right? And that's what happens when you get a lot of funding. Things don't get easier. They get more complex. You get to build and do bigger things, which is super fun. Not sure we'll get to do any bigger pre-con parties, sadly. I think they'll stay about the same size, but everything else gets to go bigger, and you get to work on some really cool and much bigger opportunities.
So our members, bookkeepers, when they're dealing with clients and they're using a piece of software to make their client's business better, they're happy to charge that client. The client's getting the benefit from it. It's a little bit more difficult when they've got something which is actually more benefit to their own practice. But they have to sit down and think, well, look, this is the cost of me running my practice in the way that I do. I've got to share that out among my clients.
Bundle it into your fees.
Yeah, exactly.
Just got to bundle it into your fee. Like if you put in that, it's a non-negotiable. I need every client on Receipt Bank or on the cloud or whatever it may be. Incorporate that into your pricing structure. Like, figure out what your margins are, how much money you want to earn per client on average. Bundle in your service fees. A lot of people say that, even whether it's PI or whatever it may be. And I talked about this at the summit, actually, the Bookkeepers Summit last year, right? I don't know if you remember my talk. I'm pretty sure it was very inspirational. Not really, but the whole point of the message was, don't tell me something's expensive compared to something that's manual, right? It's like, it's expensive compared to what? Compared to nothing. Like, oh, well, I do it manually on Word or whatever. I'm like, yeah, cool. Like, you spent £20 on Word. Like, why do you want to spend the same on something that's had $500,000 or a couple of $1 million worth of investment, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So do you find there's a different approach between bookkeeper and accountant when it comes to accepting your charges? Because obviously your charges have to be based on the medium, which I suppose is an accountant, really. How do you persuade a bookkeeper that, yeah, I know this is expensive, but I can't give you half price, because otherwise all my accountants will start calling themselves bookkeepers? It's got to be sustainable. Back to my earlier point, it's got to be sustainable, right, as well. So,
but the big thing is, like, just think about how much time, not just time, there's time, but the impact. What impact does it make? So we talked about first impressions before. It's like, well, if I spend, again, our entry level price starts at £65 a month, which a lot of people are like, oh my goodness, like I can't do that. And we would always break it down. I'd say, well, talk to me about what you're doing at the moment. How much time is that taking you to do it? What if I took that off you? What if I could give you 2 hours or 3 hours of time back every single month because of all the automation that the platform and product brings? What is that then worth to you? What if you never had to raise an invoice again? If you had to collect a payment again? What if you never had to chase a client for a payment ever again? Because you can't always put a value on that. It's like, everyone's had crap conversations with clients where they didn't want to pay, they don't remember paying, or they paid 2-3 weeks late all the time. What if you could scrap all of that? What if you never had to worry about any of that ever again? How much do you put a price on that sort of stuff? So I always look at it and say, if I can save you at least 1 to 2 hours a month, we're worth it. But at the same point, if we can help you win more business and win higher fees, and then everything else I just kind of rambled through just then, and we've got plenty of case studies. I've got a good friend of mine in Australia. She's an ICB member. I met her at the ICB Roadshow 3 years ago, I think. We went through it all, and she could see it. She saw the value. She could see what it was going to deliver for her. She signed up on the spot. She's never been happier. She uses it. She's got about 50 odd clients. She uses it with all 50 now. Every single payment runs through Practice Ignition. She does renewals every single month. We reconcile every invoice automatically. We deploy every job into her practice management system for her every single month as well.
So what does the £65 a month get you then? You said that's a basic. What is that for?
That gets you access to the product. So if you've got up to 25 active clients, that's a good place to start. So if you've only got 10 or 15 clients, for example, that can be a great way to go. So you can manage up to 25 without additional charges coming through. And that's, again, as I said, every payment, every invoice, the brochures, the proposals, we get videos you can put in there as well. And then all the support and training from our team. Like, that's all included, that you get your own account manager in that starting base price. You can see it on the website. So if you go practiceignition.com, click on pricing, you'll see all the price packages there and what's fully included in it.
Yeah. So if you've got 25 clients, it's roughly £3 per client per month, £36 a year. You should be able to put £36 into a client's bill without any major problem.
If £36 a month means that you're reconciled 12 invoices, 12 payments, and again, it just helps organise your life. Because we do revenue analytics, right? I can do a cash flow forecast based on all of your data. I can tell you how much money you're going to make this year based on all of your agreements. And then as soon as, say, a price increase happens on a software, you could actually bulk increase all the fees in your proposals inside PI. So think about all the times you need to change the scope of the work, keep track of the scope of the work over the year. You probably don't do it, not in a Word document at least, or not. You've got 3 different versions of it, managing it all in the cloud, one single source of truth. PI becomes the best kind of business continuity platform for bookkeepers and accountants for that reason. We manage all of your revenue and everything associated to that, payments, contracts, all the analytics, everything in between.
So if you look at Practice Ignition, you're getting your name around, you're becoming a very well-known product at the moment. You're certainly one of the key companies that I see every time we do anything at all in the accounting or the bookkeeping arena. What happens if, I don't know, Xero buy you? What happens then when somebody else who's not using Xero suddenly loses their whole practice driver?
Yeah, it's a good question because we've seen that a lot happen. I think Sage buying auto entry is a good example, right? What is that? And then Xero buying HubDoc as well, obviously. It definitely changes the dynamics, I guess. But at the same point, it's where you need to understand, how does that change my relationship with that software company? Can I still use Xero and auto entry? The answer is yes, you can still do that. And there's nothing impacted there, right? No different to I could still use HubDoc with QuickBooks Online. There's no issue with that happening. Just to put it out there, we're not getting bought by Xero. So just so anyone's not reading in between the lines, there's nothing going on there, at least to my knowledge. But I think, if there's such a time where PI gets bought by a particular product, then we've got to address that with our customers and with everyone else in the market when that happens and what that means. But our goal is trying to help solve this problem for accounting and bookkeeping firms worldwide. So I hope that our core message of why we exist and why we started this business in the first place transcends that. We still want to help solve that problem for people, regardless of what platform you use. I can't comment as to how that looks if we do actually get sold or bought one day, because it's probably going to be out of my control. Who knows? I could be on a beach sipping a martini by that stage if we get sold. So,
are you able to say, say if you can't, how many users you've actually got here at the moment in this country?
Yeah, so I can give you a rough guideline. There's close to sort of 700 to 800 accounting and bookkeeping firms across the UK that use Practice Ignition. I think that equates to around 3,600 unique logins, so 3,600 unique users working in accounting and bookkeeping using our platform on a regular basis.
Right. Okay.
So not a small number by any means.
Yeah.
And we're there's about 16 of us in the UK that help support those people. And then we've obviously got support teams in other countries as well that help provide that 24/7 support and access.
And how many countries are you actually in?
So our core markets are obviously United Kingdom, South Africa. We get some Irish firms jump on board as well. Canada, America, Australia, New Zealand, and some of the Asian countries, so Singapore, Hong Kong, in that sort of space. But they're kind of our core markets. So if we're 130 staff, I helped set up our office in Cape Town in February, which was a wonderful place. I'd highly recommend going to Cape Town. Amazing country, great people, great food. Obviously, we have a team in London, just over 16 of our team based out of in the UK. And then offices in Australia, offices in America and Canada as well, and in Asia.
Okay. So when lockdown finally finishes, whenever that might be, are you going to be office-based again, or are your people going to stay at home?
No, there's twofold. So we were in a WeWork, so we were paying month to month anyway. So what we've done is stop our contract with WeWork, and we pulled out of that for the moment. So I think at least until things go a little bit more normal, we will eventually move back to an office. We always want to have an office environment for team members. But at the same point, even when we had an office, we were only there 2 days a week if we're lucky. Like, it was very, if you want to work from home, work from home. If you want to go to the office, go to the office. The point is, I think we want to try and make sure our team feel equipped to do their best work and have the best environment to do that. And we want to support that, obviously. But if it means we need to stay at home longer to protect their health, safety and well-being, that's cool. What we have done actually this month is introduced a self-care day once a month. So we realise our teams are working harder than ever because they're, doing a full 8 till 6 kind of day sitting down in their home. We've said, for 1 day a month, just take a day off, doesn't come off your annual leave, and treating that as a self-care day. So I actually just came off that. I had Friday and Monday off as a self-care day where I just sat around and I did my MBA exam. Actually, I wasn't doing anything relaxing, sadly, but I was not working is probably the point. And so we want to support our teams the best way we can.
Faye's just come on and asked, do you have any dates yet for the webinars you're doing for us? Have we got dates fixed or not?
I think we're running 4 different webinars in July. So they'll run every week, I believe, from the first week of July. We're thinking around like Wednesday at midday sort of thing. That schedule is just about to get released, and I'm working with your team to get that finalised sometime in the next seven days or so. So we'll have it out ASAP, and you'll be able to pre-register for any one of the 4 sessions. But basically the themes, and I'd love feedback if people have particular themes they'd love to hear, but we're looking and focusing around things like, pricing, negotiations, selling, and just having confidence in those areas. There'll be a deep dive of what practice ignition does amongst that as well for those that are interested. So you can say, cool, is this actually everything Trent says it is? Because I'm aware I make things sound super easy sometimes. So I'd love for you to put me to the test and see if it stacks up.
Yeah, I get accused of making things sound easy sometimes as well. But I always find that if you start off with that, if you start off with thinking it's going to be hard, it's definitely going to be hard.
I promise. I've got 3,500 odd people that'll swear it was easy to do.
So you're obviously Australian, as we know. You've been to South Africa. You're now in the UK. Are you going to continue to just travel around, or are you thinking of setting down roots somewhere? I mean, is your good lady an Australian too, or have you met her here? Yeah, she's Australian.
She is a lady. Yeah, she's an Australian. We've been married for nearly 8 years in February. So before I was in the accounting industry, which is always super fun. I think we're in a fortunate position, right? Like, we're both quite young. We're both 31 years old. Until COVID, obviously, we've got the option to travel and see the world and do what we got to do. I came to the UK because that was what the business decided was the best thing I could do to support them. If they tell me to move somewhere else in a year or two's time, then we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But I'm thoroughly enjoying my time here. It's been awesome to see the team grow. From when I arrived, there was 3 of us, and now there's 16. So it's been awesome to help be involved with that team as they build and grow. We've got a new head of region. Her name's Emma. She's fantastic. She was a business director at Xero in New Zealand for a number of years. Super knowledgeable, amazing passion and heart for the accounting and bookkeeping community. So we've got a really strong leadership team here in the UK, and it's just super exciting to see it all come together.
So you're not thinking of doing a Wayne and Sally Schmidt job then, and just give it all up and spend, 5 years or something traveling around the world, they claim now? I don't know. He picks up jobs faster than he picks up.
It's tempting. It's tempting to want to drop it all and go and live in Austria with Wayne and Sal. I've fortunately had a lot of wines and cocktails with Wayne and Sal over the years. So, and to be fair, I think they're a bit further ahead in their journey than what I am. I think I've got another 10, 15 years in me before I can retire and see the world the way they do.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know Wayne Schmidt, we first met him 12 years ago when we were across in Australia and we were setting up ICB Australia. He was one of the guys that we met. He at that time was working for MYOB. And those of you who don't know what that is, that's a really good piece of software, Mind Your Own Business, which was doing exactly what it says, looking after small businesses. And he's an interesting guy. He is to shoes. He was
the first. He was also the first employee for Xero in Australia back in the day.
Was he?
He was, yeah. So he was Xero's #1 first employee in Australia, which is Obviously they were super successful when the platform listed on the New Zealand and Australian stock exchange, and if you wonder where they've been very successful over the years. He was involved in carbon once upon a time as well. Let's get that product in there as well. So yeah, he's got some strong ties to the accounting community. But personally, Wayne's been a huge mentor for me back when I was, first coming in and showing me the ropes and all that kind of stuff. So Wayne and Sal are very good friends, and great people.
Of course, the guy that ran MYOB put some of the money behind Rod to set up Zero. Craig Winkler.
So Craig Winkler was also an investor. Craig's also an investor in Practice Ignition. So he was the guy that obviously invested in Zero. He was one of our seed investors before, I think, and part of the Series A. So Craig has been a heavy involvement in Practice Ignition as well.
Yeah, when June and I went across to Australia for the first time, he actually collected us at the airport, and he's a very gentle, very quiet guy, unassuming, but obviously very clever. So that's good. Oh, well, that's good to know you've got some decent people behind anyway. That's brilliant.
Well, the last round of funding we just picked up was from a group called Tiger Global, and these are the same guys that invested in groups like Facebook and Uber and a bunch way back when. So I think I looked at it, the day they gave us 20 mil, they spent the next 15 days dishing out another 10 to 100 mil to about 15 different startups. So we're definitely backed by some. We're in good company, is what I'm saying.
Right. It seems to be a profession with lots and lots of young people, just like me. But
we're cheaper. We're cheaper.
Is there a burnout time, do you think, for you guys in the tech industry? Have you got to still look young to be successful?
Not at all. I mean, we've got, I think, to one of my colleagues in our team, Peter, has been working in practice. I won't quote the age, but I'm assuming, Pete, you're he'll probably watch this and play it back, but I'm thinking late 40s, early 50s kind of vibe, and he's so smart and exactly what we need in our business, because he is an ex-accountant that understands and can articulate exactly the pain. He knows the pain they go through every single day. So he's part of our education team. We don't just look for young, youthful, high energy people because they're cheaper. As I said, we're looking for the best experienced people that help our customers solve and have those pains and problems that they've been able to solve as well. But in terms of
I've got a question.
It's a good question. Just to answer the burnout question, I think you do have to take care of yourself. I say this to our team all the time. We need you for the long run. I don't need you to burn out in the next 2 weeks. I need you to be able to do your role, do it well, and be happy about it for the next 2 to 3 years long. So if you need a day, take a day. If you're having trouble, reach out and ask for help. When we talk about culture and building sustainable teams, that comes down to having very open and fruitful conversations and say, it's okay to not be okay. And it's okay to talk about that in whatever environment makes you feel comfortable and safe.
Right. One of the questions I've got here is, you buy your product, do you give training to begin with?
We do. So the way our success, the way that our customer journey works, let's say you become a customer practitioner today, you go on a 90-day schedule. So you're then allocated to a customer success manager. That would be, someone, either James or Lucy in our team. They are fantastic. They're probably the two nicest humans I've ever met, that both work in this almost like a welcome team kind of role. And their job is to help you get up to speed and using Practice Ignition in the first 90 days. Once you get past 90 days, you go into one or two buckets. You either work with our education team, because there's a few things you really want to work on and get the use out of the product, or you work with our account management team, where you want to think a little bit more strategically about how you attack and use Practice Ignition to grow your business, and how you might want to move all of your existing clients on the Practice Ignition with payments and all that sort of stuff. So we try to cater this around you and what is most appropriate for you as a result.
And the other thing is, obviously, you are traditionally an Australian product. Where does your service come from? Because the reason I mention this is a lot of people think that some of the overseas-based organisations, whenever they decide to close down to clean the system out, it's always done here at our time rather than, so that at home nobody loses anything. How does that work with you?
So we operate on the same servers that companies like Xero and Intuit also operate on. So if you're familiar, comfortable and happy using those platforms, you're using it with us as well. So that's part of the Amazon AWS web services, which is all hosted and built out of America. Yes, it is GDPR compliant, and we've got all the documentation and certification to help showcase that it's GDPR compliant. But yeah, we use the same servers and systems that companies like Xero and Intuit use for their own data, and they've combined, like you're talking around 9 million accounting ledgers all built into their systems just in the online version of their product. So yeah, we're comfortable, happy to say that we secure platform that can be accessed anywhere, anytime. But yeah, actually your summit, good example. I met someone that had an account with us like 18 months prior and just ended up stopped using the product for whatever the reasons were, like nothing sort of major. But she said, can you find me an engagement letter of this client, because I've actually had a dispute and I know that I signed him through here. Within 3 minutes, I was able to find the account that had closed down from 18 months ago, find the signed engagement letter and email it to her so that she could then say to her client, actually, this is what you paid for. This is what you signed off on. So as much as it was a customer that wasn't necessarily a customer anymore, we were still something we're able to help with because we do retain all the information.
Yeah. So do you link it to some sort of electronic signature system, or?
Our system is the electronic signature. So PI, the IP of our product is the digitally signing element of it.
So we haven't got to buy that as well. So that's another bit of saving there. Oh, that's good.
Correct. So Ignition, what you're paying for is the proposal system. So creating it all, the digital signature is all built into that product. And then the payment gateway is also built into the product. So there are payment like fees for processing direct debit and credit card. I'd say we're probably actually one of the cheaper payment direct debit facilities in the UK at the moment, which is quite cool. Not that I love being cheap, because I like to be a premium. Like, we provide a good service in that sense, but we're very well priced on our direct debiting fees in the UK, which is great.
Brilliant. Okay. So what would you like your closing shot to be at our members? Because I've kept you up for an hour now, and we need to let you get back and talk to your team or go put your feet up, slippers or otherwise. So what are you? What's your parting shot? What have you got to say to our members? Why should they now learn a bit more about Practice Ignition?
I mean, it depends on the stage of growth you're in, but I'd say that the parting message I'd have for everyone is actually just stay safe and look after yourself, but in turn, look after your business. Like, are you feeling confident about everything in one place at the moment? Are all your business agreements in place? Do you know where all your money and revenue is coming from? Do you know who your good payers are and your bad payers? If you can answer yes to all those systems and you feel really organized about how the revenue of business works, don't talk to me. But if you do feel like you can improve some of your processes around revenue management, getting agreements in place and feeling secure about all the relationships you have with your clients, come and chat to us at Practice Ignition. We'd love to even just, no obligation, understand who you are, the challenges you have in your business, and have a demo of what we can do. If we can't help, we'll tell you. We will flat out tell you we're probably not the product for you for whatever the reason may be. If we are a good fit, we'll also tell you that as well and say, yeah, these are the pain points we can solve for you. Try us out. We've got a free trial. We're month to month. We're not even locking you in for a long-term agreement. You could try us out for a month or 2 months and then kill it off later because you're like, you know what, this just doesn't fit me.
Now, I said that was sort of the end of the questions, but I got one here from Lucy Brown. And Lucy Brown's husband is connected to the big boss, so we have to be very careful. Can you use PI for an e-signature on documents not originating from PI software itself?
It's a great question, Lucy. My short answer would be, I would actually rather say no than say yes. You could if you really wanted to, but it's not what we were built to do. So most cases we see firms will use Practice Ignition for all the client onboarding. Again, thinking managing your fees and your revenue, that's our core goal. We're not there as a digital signing product like DocuSign or HelloSign. In some instances, we've done a lot of partnerships with DocuSign, for example, where you're using them for signature on agreements. Ours is more about securing revenue and getting payment plans set up on the back of that.
All right. So the templates, for example, you can get that signed off, but if we want to add other templates into it, go somewhere else for that, really.
Basically, that's just not what we were built for. The one thing I will say, we are looking at introducing the ICB engagement letter templates into Practice Ignition. So the idea is that if you're an ICB member and you want to use the ICB engagement letter template, we'll just have that mapped out in our product. So you could get started today, in theory, and be ready to go. You wouldn't have to map anything out. It's just already there for you. Amy was kind enough to give me the engagement letter last week, and my team are currently mapping that out into our system as we speak. So I'm hoping to see it by the end of this week.
Right, I don't get told these things anymore, but never mind. But it's why they put me on this TV program, so it keeps me out of trouble and out of the way.
We never want to bother you, Gary. You've got more important things to worry about. And this was not one of those.
Deciding which tie to put on or something. Yeah. So just before we go, everybody, don't forget tomorrow it's Thank Furlough. It's Friday. Jackie Mount will be back here with us. There's a lot happening at the moment. There's a lot going to happen. So I know she's just waiting to tell you some of the new things that are happening and answer some of your questions. Next week, we've got quite a lot coming up. We've got some big announcements coming up on the Lucas as well. So that's good for Practice Ignition as well as for all you other people listening. And we'll hopefully give you an update of the whole of next week's schedule tomorrow. Trent, it's always good to speak to you. You're good value for money, even though you don't get any, so that's good.
I'll be sending you that invoice I talked about, Gary, because we had that open chat about it.
Absolutely.
So
don't worry.
If you get it, don't be surprised.
Thank you for coming on. We're happy to start working even more closely with you. You did go down well at conference, and I think our members are going to be interested in what you've got to offer and hopefully what we can offer as a joint proposal. So
we're excited to support all bookkeepers, and we're a big fan of ICB. I've been to many an ICB roadshow in my time in Australia as well, and obviously here in the UK. So yeah, we're glad to be here, and thanks for inviting us on the show.
And hopefully one day we'll get to meet again over a barbie or whatever it might be. But so nice to see you again. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day,
everybody. Bye. Don't forget tomorrow.
Bye-bye.